Advocates recently gathered at the State House in a call to increase funding for legal aid for the needy. This is for representation in civil cases. To tell us about the request is the Executive Director of the Mass Legal Assistance Corporation, Lonnie Powers. Thank you very much for being with us, Lonnie.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be here.
To remind our viewers, talk about the kind of cases and people that you usually represent.
Right. Civil legal aid programs represent low-income people, and by that we mean a family of four making $31,325 a year or less, which is not very much in Massachusetts. And the types of cases that we handle include housing, which is the largest single kind of case, about 39%. Health, getting people health benefits. We have increasing demands for help with immigration cases, both to explain what's going on with immigration to the extent that anybody can figure that out, and then providing representation for people who are entitled to stay in this country but have to demonstrate that. And so we wind up representing those people. We have a lot of domestic violence cases, unfortunately. In fact, the demand for domestic violence cases is so great that we can't handle any other kinds of family law. And we work on disability benefits cases and any other instance where low-income people are deprived of their rights. One more example is employment. Often we find that low-income people may not be paid at all for the work they've done, and we have to represent them to get the wages they've earned.
We usually think of domestic violence as involving criminal cases, but why is civil litigation so important?
It's important because domestic violence is really about controlling the person who's been battered, or either physically or emotionally, and there are quite often children involved. So the batterer often has control of the money, of the resources, maybe owns the house the family's living in. So without legal assistance to help right the balance of power through the court system between those two, the woman, and it's most often a woman, and the children may be homeless. They may become dependent on public benefits. The kids have a much harder time continuing in school and getting a good education. So we're able to, through representing that family, to provide economic and emotional stability for them, and they can then make their way much more satisfactorily in their lives.
Of course, another thing that's of interest here is not just the people you represent, but the people you don't represent because you just don't have the resources.
Right. We, as I mentioned, we have to turn away about 65% of the people who are eligible who have a case we would like to handle, but we just don't have the resources. And that means that in the case of housing, for example, about 90% of the tenants are not represented in housing cases, and their chances of getting a good result are much greater. In fact, what we have been able to demonstrate is that when there are lawyers on both sides, it is much easier to reach an agreement that's good for the landlord and for the tenant. It costs the landlord a lot of money to evict somebody. And if we can help work with both sides and work out a payment plan or something else, then our clients have a place to live. The landlord continues to get paid his or her rent.
This has been a news, and we're talking with Lonnie Powers from the Mass Legal Assistance Corporation. Lonnie, one reason you're looking for, I guess, an even bigger budget increase this time around is because of what's going on around immigration enforcement. Explain that.
Yes. Well, you've probably seen in the news, it's both immigration enforcement and it's the changes in the administration's policy about enforcement. The administration has started much more rigorously trying to deport people who are not don't have a final legal right to be in this country. And in some cases, it's someone who was admitted legally but may have committed a crime at some point, often a fairly minor crime. And the immigration services have started hanging out at the court system when somebody's going in for a domestic violence case. And that has frightened people so much that families are not sending their kids to school, they're not going for medical appointments, they're afraid to testify in a criminal case in which they might be a witness. So it's having a huge ripple effect. So trying to assure those people that they have some protection and trying to process cases for them through a bureaucracy that is extremely backed up and is increasingly trying to make it even more difficult for people to prove their right to stay here, is what legal aid is working on. Yesterday at the Walk to the Hill that you referenced, Chief Justice Gantz of the Supreme Judicial Court spoke very eloquently, and he asked rhetorically, why do we need more money for legal aid? And he said, in part, it's because people who had temporary protected status from Haiti or El Salvador or other places and have lost that. And he cited the case of a woman who has 2 children. She works from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. Cleaning offices downtown to try to have enough money to take care of her kids. If she loses her status and gets deported, her kids who are American citizens are either going to have to go back to a country that they've never seen or stay here without their mother and be orphans and may have to go on welfare and state benefits.
Well, regardless the merits of any argument in a case on immigration, talk about the huge gap, I think, between the odds when you have a lawyer representing you and when you don't.
You're about 10 times worse off in immigration court or in the immigration hearings without a lawyer than you are with a lawyer, because the rules are very, very difficult to understand. Many of the people that we represent, English is not their first language. Often these people may be in detention and it's very difficult to even talk to them. And they get enormous pressure from the immigration service to voluntarily deport once they've been picked up. And often when people are picked up here, they might be sent to a detention center in another state where they have nobody around them and no real access to attorneys.
Lonnie, we should mention that if people want to find out more or even ask about the legal help, is there a number or a website that they can go to?
There are several websites. They can certainly go to the MLAC website, which is mlac.org. We have links to other websites where people can get answers to questions about their legal rights, can find out what legal aid program serves the area that they live in, and can actually apply for services online and get referred to a program if they're eligible and they have a case we can handle.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Lonnie Powers of the Mass Legal Assistance Corporation. Up in a moment, a planning initiative for Blue Hill Avenue corridor.